Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day to everyone. Today, our group will be presenting on the causal relationship between SKPMG2 Standard 4 and also SKPMG2 Standard 5. This presentation is prepared for tutorial topic 4 and my name is Fatin Arini binti Muhammad Faizul Iskandar. I will be presenting on the first 3 slides of this presentation on behalf of my group members, Lailatul Qadrina and also Akila Zulfa. In this presentation, we will explain how effective teaching practices under Standard 4 directly influence student outcomes under Standard 5, especially in terms of thinking skills and also bilingual proficiency. To begin with, SKPMG2 Standard 4 focuses on learning and facilitation or PDPC. Under this standard, the teacher plays an important role as a guider and also motivator to the students rather than simply delivering content to them. Meanwhile, SKPMG2 Standard 5 focuses on the student outcomes, particularly the development of thinking skills and bilingual proficiency. The key connection here is that effective teaching practices in Standard 4 are the driving force behind the achievement of student outcomes in Standard 5. In other words, how teacher teaches will directly affect how students think, communicate, and also learn. Next, we have the contrast to classrooms. To better understand this relationship, let us compare two different classrooms. The first one, we have Classroom A. The teaching approach is traditional and teacher-centered. Usually, the lesson rely heavily on textbook. Students are mostly passive and learning focuses on memorization only. Language mistakes are often corrected immediately, which may discourage students from speaking in bilingual. As a result, students show limited thinking skills and low bilingual confidence. In contrast, we have Classroom B. Reflects the SKPMG2 approach. Learning is student-centered and problem-solving based. The teacher acts as a guider and also motivator to the student, which makes students feel safe to express ideas in both languages. This leads to active thinking, meaningful discussion, and also stronger bilingual engagement.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is Lailatul Qadrina binti Mazlan and I'm from Tessin 1. So now I will talk about the contrast between two different classroom approaches and the important roles of the teacher as a guide and the motivator. So the first one is the contrast between two classrooms. Let's begin with Classroom A, which represents the traditional approach. In this classroom, learning is teacher-centered and textbook-driven. So the teacher talks most of the time while the students mainly listen and take notes. Students focus heavily on memorization rather than understanding the concepts deeply. So when students make language mistakes, the teacher corrects them immediately. While correction is important, too much correction can discourage students from speaking. As a result, the outcome is quite limited because students may score well in exams, but they often lack critical thinking skills and may feel less confident using two languages actively. Now let's look at Classroom B, which follows the SKPMG2 approach. This classroom is student-centered and uses problem-based learning, so students are more involved in discussions, group work, and real-world tasks. The teacher acts as a guide and motivator rather than just a lecturer. So the classroom environment is safe and supportive, especially for language use. Students are encouraged to try speaking without fear of making mistakes. The outcome is very different because students become more active thinkers, better problem solve, and more confident in bilingual communication. I will explain about the teacher as a guide in the SKPNG2. In the SKPNG2 approach, the teacher plays the role of a guide. Instead of giving all the answers, the teacher facilitates exploration. For example, the teacher may present real-world problems and ask the students to think critically. So the teacher might ask probing questions like, why do you think like that? And maybe what will happen if? So the teacher also walks around the classroom, listens to discussions, and supports students without directly giving the answers. So this approach develops students' critical thinking and problem-solving skills because they learn how to think independently rather than depend entirely on the teacher. The next one is the teacher as a motivator. Besides being a guide, the teacher is also a motivator. A good teacher creates a safe and encouraged classroom climate. Students feel comfortable sharing ideas. The teacher praises effort, not just correctness. For example, even if a student's sentence is not perfect, teacher appreciates their attempt. In bilingual classrooms, the teacher supports students' attempts to use both languages without immediately correcting every mistake. The impact is actually powerful because students build confidence, and over time, this confidence improves their bilingual.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Akila Zulfa and I will continue this presentation. Now we are going to talk about causal link to standard 5 of thinking skills. As we all know, PPPM or the Pelan Pembangunan Malaysia emphasizes on a higher order thinking skills. Let's begin by examining the first key student outcome from Standard 5, which is thinking skills. The Malaysia Education Blueprint or PPPM, the Pelan Pembangunan Malaysia, emphasizes the need for higher order thinking. But how do we actually develop this in students? Our slide shows the direct causal link provided by Standard 4. First, when a teacher uses guided inquiry, it forces students to move beyond memorization and engage in analytical thinking. Secondly, by structuring group discussions, the teacher enables collaborative reasoning as students learn to debate and build on each other's ideas. And third, by presenting real-world problems, the teachers will push their students to find a creative solution that can be found in textbook or even by their own. Causal link to Standard 5, bilingual proficiency. As we all know, our students, one of them knows English, but they are too afraid to speak it out loud. This slide explains how teachers is important as a role and motivator in order to solve this problem, also creating a casual link to proficiency. A teacher is important in teaching a classroom environment. When a teacher creates a safe space for language use, it directly reduces students' anxiety and students will stop being afraid of making mistakes. When their fear is reduced, the teacher's encouragement becomes powerful. It gives students the willingness to communicate and finally makes them try to use the language. And because this language practice happens within contextual learning, like solving a real world problem, it becomes meaningful and memorable, not just a dry grammar exercise. So to conclude our analysis, we can see a clear and consistent pattern across both student outcomes. Standard 4 is not just a checklist of teaching methods. It is fundamentally about the teacher's mindset and role. It is the difference between a teacher who sees themselves as an instructor versus ones who see themselves as a guide and a motivator. Our slides have shown that when teachers guide their students effectively, their students will develop critical thinking skills. And when teachers motivate them effectively, students build the confidence for bilingual proficiency. That's all from us. Thank you.